so let's talk about, I'm going to go back up to the project level so we can talk about the top level of the hierarchy. And go over to the first tab, which is the General tab. Again, it's all the identifying information that we put in when we created the project. Notice that right now the action buttons down here are disabled. If they're when you're looking at your projects, if the buttons are disabled, that means you haven't done anything on the screen that's considered a change that would be an outstanding change that must be either saved or canceled. So we haven't touched any of this data on the screen. All we've asked for is to display it to the screen. So if I come over here, I can actually make a change to this screen. So I will add a note in the project notes and say, team meeting is scheduled for October 2013. As soon as you make a change throughout the system, as soon as you actually type a change anywhere within an enabled block for you to make a change in, that block itself will be identified with the background, that bright yellow background, so that you can see that you now have outstanding changes on the screen. In addition, your buttons now will be enabled so that you can actually do a save or a cancel. And as well, I can't do anything on this screen without either saving or canceling my changes. Notice this little icon to the right. Anytime you have notes or comments, anything that could be considered sort of a never-ending text field in which you can continue to add information about something, you can click on this little notes icon. I could have added this exact same message in its very own window here by clicking on the notes icon, and I can continue adding to this at this point. Message will be sent out 1 week prior. And click on accept, and notice it just repeats it right here in the notes. So you can use this however, if you're more comfortable working with a separate screen, just know that this notes icon is always available to you to be able to type your notes or your comments in. Down at the bottom here, you have something called change notes. Now, change notes are something new to SEPS 3. Typically, we talk a lot about whenever you make changes, we want you to enter comments relating to that change so that you have a justification as to why you made a change that might be important down the road during the approval process. Change notes are a little different in the sense that it can also support why you made a change, but anytime you make a change, you have the ability to enter something in here in order to carry with you in the audit trail of the project. This is not the place that you would want to add something that you would ultimately say want to show up on a PFD report. This is for your own benefit to identify why you're making a change. So, and it's optional. You're not required to put something in here at all, but I certainly can, and I can show you where it shows up if you do so. So I've added a note, and I'll click on Save Changes now. You get the little indicator that changes have been saved. In addition, you'll now notice that the last edited block has been updated to today. Well, it was today's date anyway, but the time is now the time that I made the change, and again, it tracks who made the change as well. If I want to see where that change note is that I put on this project, I can come over here to this icon here, View Change History, and notice we've got two items in here. This is when the project was actually added, West Fort Hood. It was the actual change was an add, and there were obviously no details because it was an add. But I just updated this project. The project notes were changed from team meeting is scheduled for October 2013, and the message will be sent out 1 week prior. And my change note that I put in there is now added after telephone session on June 27th. So if you use these change notes pretty regularly, you will have a really good history about why you did what you did to your project internally, and you can always go back and find out what the status of a particular field was prior to the change, and it tracks all that information. So the audit trail itself really will provide you a lot of information that you didn't have in SEPS 2 relating to your project. So I'll go ahead and close here. So now we've just made a change to the project itself. It was one relatively quick change, one little piece of information about the project. But typically you're going to want to jump right in and start working with input data questions for the departments that you've added to your project. Because input data and working with your program for design or building a contents list for your project affects a larger portion of your project. It touches many different parts of the hierarchy all the way down to the room level. You're not going to be able to make changes to the system without locking the project. And you actually have two levels of locking. You can lock the entire project, and in order to do that, you would right-click, hover over Project Status Options, and choose Lock Project. And you would typically do this if you're creating this project and you're the only one that will be working in this project. You might as well go ahead and lock your project and do all the changes that you need to do. And no need to unlock it and lock it unless you intend to share it with somebody. If you're going to be working in a team environment, it's going to be really important that you don't lock the entire project, because if you do, and your intention is to have other members of your team to be able to modify portions of the project, and you've locked the entire project, they're not going to be able to do their work, and they're going to be coming back to you and asking you to please unlock the project. So for the alternative method, I'm going to come off that. If I go down to the department level, I can right-click, choose Department Status Options, and then choose Lock and Unlock the Department. What that does is that only affects that department that you have selected, and all other departments remain unlocked unless somebody else has gone in there and has the ability to lock a department within your project. All that is determined by you as a project owner, and we'll talk a lot about permissions moving forward after we cover the functionality of the project builder itself. So for our example, we want to go ahead and start working with input data. I'm currently the only one working with this project, so I'm going to go ahead and lock the entire project. So if I click on the project level, right-click, choose Project Status Options, and choose Lock, Unlock Project, it's going to ask for a confirmation. And this is a good example of what I was mentioning about the pop-up messages. Are intended to show you what the level within the hierarchy that you ultimately will be impacting. You've got your black bars at the top and the bottom to let you know that you're asking about a project level request. It says, "Are you sure you want to lock the project?" And I will say yes. And as soon as the project is locked, notice all the icons here have now changed to a lock icon, so that you know the entire project is totally locked from anybody else but the person that locked it. The second indicator is that on the General tab here, and that would be at any level, I'll go ahead and click on those, you'll see this indicator down here that says Locked by Me. And the reason we show this is because if you are working in some sort of a team environment and somebody needs to get to a portion of the project that you have locked, they need to know who has it locked within that team in order to ask for access to it. So we wanted to make sure that you knew who actually put it in a locked status so they can turn around and contact you and say, "Hey, open it up, I need to do my work." If I go down to the department level, you'll notice on the General tab the lock information continues to display. So as you drill down into the hierarchy on the General tab, you'll always see the lock indicator about who has it locked. So if you ever need to request access to it, you'll know who to go to. So I'm going to go back to the department level, because the department level is where we're going to start our input data. If you look to the right-hand side, you've got tabs that should be very familiar to you, with the exception of permissions, and we'll come back to that. Again, we have our General tab relating to the department. So we've got our agency name, criteria name, our departmental net to gross factor, any department notes, and the information relating to who created this department and last edited it. So let's go ahead and jump directly over into input data. In input data, we need to talk a bit about what you've got here so that you feel comfortable with what you're looking at. A little bit different from SEPS 2, but a lot more, I think, functional for you. It has a lot more information and a lot more capability. So I'd like to cover this pretty thoroughly so you're comfortable with it. When you first come into an input data worksheet, all your questions are going to be tagged with a status of new. And what that means is that you have never touched changed the answer to any of the questions in the list that are identified as new. As soon as you make a change or type anything into the answer block for any of these questions and click on Save, then the status will change to answered, and you'll actually see that once we get in here and make changes. Your input data statement list, all your questions, they now have numbers next to them, so hopefully that will be a little bit more helpful for you as the planner to be able to identify individual questions that you may have questions, further questions about from, say, another team member, or even from us. We may ask you what number question you're referring to if you have a question about something. You'll notice as we start to answer these questions, and some of the, as in SEPS 2, you have questions and then you have sub-questions based on how you answer a particular statement that will pop up, and those questions the sub-statements will be numbered like 1.1, 1.2 as sub-statements, so you'll know how they relate back to an upper-level question. As in SEPS 2, you've still got the default value. This is the value that is set in criteria prior to any answers to any questions being evaluated. And then this second to the last column is your answer column, where you actually provide answers to the input data statements. Again, you only have two options when you're answering input data. You have to answer yes, no for a question that's asking you for, is something authorized, or are certain services provided. But you, on the opposite spectrum, you have to enter a number of some sort. How many providers, how many stops will be projected. Now, when you go to actually answer these questions, there's a couple different methods that you can approach it, using your keyboard or using the mouse, and it's really a personal preference. You can use your mouse the whole way down if you want to. For this particular question, if I click on the drop-down arrow, you have the option of no or yes, and that's all that you can choose. If I click on yes, it's going to go ahead and open up the sub-statements associated with this particular question. I could just as easily have selected the question and pressed the Y on my keyboard, and it would have done the exact same thing. So you can either type in N or Y to signify you want it to be yes or no, respectively, or you can use your mouse and actually click on the value that you want for this particular answer. And I'm going to just kind of run down the list here with some sample information that I've got, and then we'll talk about it prior to saving so you can see how it works. And I'll click on yes to pediatrics. And notice if I don't touch the answer itself, it does not turn yellow, which means I haven't touched it. I'm not making any changes, but anything in which I'm physically changing the answer, you're going to see that it's highlighted in yellow, so it's very visible to you which questions you've touched and which questions you haven't. So I'm going to continue to answer yes to some of these and put in some staffing and workload answers. All right, so we have now answered as many questions as we want to in this particular input data worksheet. Now notice at the bottom we've got the ability to save and cancel, just as you've seen before, but we also have a button called Preview Changes. Now because this is the first time I'm in this input data worksheet for this project, there's no need for me to preview any changes because it wasn't anything there before to compare against. So I'm on the first time in, I'm going to come right here and I'm going to go ahead and save my changes and let it evaluate all the room criteria statements and generate my my space. Once it's completed, you'll get the changes saved pop up. You'll also notice that any question that I answered in any way, shape, or form has now changed from a status of new. These guys I didn't touch. These other ones are now changed to answered. And you'll notice that if I open some of these functional areas on the left, you'll see that there a lot of spaces have been created over here on the left. Now, if I want to go back, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple things in here to see what, let you see what the impact is prior to actually saving your changes. So if I come back here, and for this particular question, I answered yes, that ultrasound services will be provided in this clinic. Let's go ahead and say no. And then I'm also going to change the number of inhalation treatments here. I'm going to give it increase it from 35 up to 90. And I'm also going to add one additional pulmonologist. So I'm going to change that question to 2. And again, we've got highlighting to show you what questions have been touched or changed. And this time I'm going to go ahead and click on the Preview Changes button so that I can see what's the impact of making these changes to my program for design prior to actually saving the changes in my project. So if I click on Preview Changes, you now get a screen that's broken into 2 sections. At the top, it's showing you the 3 questions that we made a change to. The old answer was changed for ultrasound services being provided from yes to no. We've increased the inhalation treatments from 35 to 90, and we've increased the pulmonologist projected from 1 to 2. If we continue to save with those new answers for those 3 questions, then there are these 3 tabs will show you the true impact of continuing with saving your changes. You'll get 1 room added, and that's a new provider office in the staff and admin area for the pulmonologist. If I click on rooms that will be updated, it's going to show you that the waiting room, the clinic waiting, is going to increase from 99 NSF to 181 NSF. And then by saying that we're no longer going to have ultrasound services, then it's going to remove the XDUS1 ultrasound from the cardiology patient areas. If I like that, then I'm going to go ahead and click on Accept and Save. Otherwise, I'm going to say, no, I want to look at that again. I don't necessarily want to save that yet. I can click on Go Back to Worksheet, and then I can make any adjustments that I want to make. I still haven't saved anything. I can actually change what I've done, or I can come down here and cancel, undo changes, and then I haven't impacted my program for design at all. For this particular example, I'll go ahead and click on Save Changes. And now it's reevaluating any of the rooms that are impacted by the questions that you have changed previously. Now let's say that you've been working on this project for a while, and you have gotten direction. You've already answered input data. That's sort of in the past. You've already gone into the process of making a ton of manual changes to your system, and per direction, you've been given direction to remove a bunch of space, tons of rooms. Your program for design doesn't look anything like it did when the baseline was created after answering input data, and you really feel like you've gone outside of the boundaries of where you want your program for design to be, and you want to kind of just do a fresh, total reset. You can come back in here, go back to your input data worksheet, click on Reevaluate All Answers, and it will go through and look at all your answers in the list rather than just one or two that you may have changed, and reevaluate your space according to all the answers in the tree, in the list. One of the things within in SEPS 2 was that whenever you came to an input data worksheet and you clicked on Save, all answers were always reevaluated. That could potentially, cause some issues for sure if you've done a lot of manual changes to your project. Now, I won't say that you still won't have changes to your program for design when you come back and reevaluate all answers, but you're definitely sort of pushing the reset button and approaching it as SEPS 2 approached it in its input data worksheet, whereas the way the input data worksheet works by default now, the only rooms that will be impacted are rooms that are affected by the individual questions that you have made a change to. It attempts to minimize the impact to your program for design as needed. And lastly, on this particular screen, as far as input goes, notice this column over here to the right-hand side called Notes. Now, this capability was in SEPS 2, but it was a little more difficult to find. You had to right-click on a question and then state that you wanted to add notes. What's good about making the notes a little more visible to you is that hopefully it will become more routine for you to really put in comments and notes on just about everything in the application so that you've got a historical perspective of why you do what you do in your project. So in this particular example, I think let's add a note about pediatric services. We said that, yes, pediatric services will be provided, but you have kind of heard that that may or may not happen down the road. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Notes option here, and I'm going to just identify that this will be an item that probably needs to be revisited at a future date. Doesn't change the data at all, but what it does is just flag that you have put some information regarding this particular question in your project, and I'll click Save Changes. And now anytime you come into the input data worksheet for cardiopulmonary, you'll see any notes that you've entered on any of these questions. You can even put information in here relating to the person that's giving you the answer to the question, so that if you ever need to go back and ask them for more information, you'll have their contact information right at hand if you needed it. A couple more icon options up here at the top. These are your go to previous worksheet and go to next worksheet. So if you have we only have one department in this particular project so far, but if you had multiple departments, or if you have functional area level questions within the department that you're currently have selected, you would click on Go to Next Worksheet, which I'm pretty sure there is a functional area input data worksheet available for cardiology patient areas. There is, and it's asking me how many stress EKGs will be performed annually, and now I can answer that. 1,200. Click on Save Changes, and now you've answered the question at the functional area level. I'm going to go back up to the department level because it'll make a little bit more sense to you. This third icon here is our Worksheet Complete button. And in SEPS 2, Worksheet Complete was intended to give you a visual of sort of setting an indicator that I have answered this input data list of questions to the best of my ability. I don't expect that I'm going to get changes. I'm ready to start manually updating my project. And as we all know, input data is intended to give you a starting point and a baseline. Once you start making manual changes to your project, that's when you don't typically go back to input data without impacting your program for design pretty significantly. So Worksheet Complete is supposed to give you a quick indicator that I've done the best I can with the information that has been provided to me. So I'll go ahead and click on the Worksheet Complete button. It's asking me if I want to set this input data as complete, and again, notice green bars because we're at the department level. I'll click on Yes. And once a worksheet is considered complete, you'll see that the status changes to complete, gives you the bright green at the top, stating that this particular worksheet is complete. You're not prevented from making changes. You can still make changes if you want to. But what this provides you is, let's, for grins, say that I'm going to change will cardiology services be provided from yes to no. If I went right down here to save changes without having Worksheet Complete set, it would immediately save my changes and impact your program for design based on the answer that you provided. And of course, in this particular department, that would be pretty significant. In this case, by having set the input data worksheet to Worksheet Complete and clicking on Save Changes, it's going to immediately go to the preview changes so that you don't have to do it. So it's one preventative measure from doing something that you really didn't intend to do within your project as you're working with input data. In this particular case, 10 rooms will actually be deleted from this department. If we had not set it to Worksheet Complete, it would have those 10 would have been deleted without you having put eyes on it and going into preview changes yourself to have seen what the impact would be. I'm going to go ahead and say go back to Worksheet and cancel undo. Okay. And lastly, on this screen, it's another feature that was in SEPS 2, but it was a little bit more difficult to get to. It was hidden behind a right-click menu on questions. But this little key up here is actually quite helpful, and I think if you get used to using it, it's going to probably give you information that you didn't even know that you had previously. Let's use the ultrasound services as an example. If I click on the ultrasound services question, and then I come up to Show Key References and click on the key, the intent behind using the key for particular questions is to show you, prior to ever answering the question, how that particular question is used in room criteria and potentially other input data statements. For this particular example, that question is not referenced in other input data statements at either the department or the functional area level, but notice it is used in a room criteria statement. So you can actually see what rooms could be driven or generated based on how you answer a particular question. And this will also give you sort of a feel for how room criteria is written and you can, kind of become pretty proficient in understanding how the equations are built and actually do the generation of the space behind the scenes. So in this example, it's telling you that in the cardiopulmonary services department, in the cardiology patient areas functional area, the ultrasound room, the XD-US1, has a condition in it which says if this question that we selected, will ultrasound services be provided, notice it's right down here, if it equals yes, if you answer that question as yes, then you will create one of these rooms at a size of 165 NSF. Okay, so we can actually, if I cancel close, at this point it's no, so we don't have an XDSU1. So if I answer yes, I'll click on Save Changes, Accept and Save. Notice the worksheet complete automatically brought up the preview changes for me. And notice now I'm underneath, let me close these up so it's a little easier to read. Under the cardiology patient areas, I now have my XD-US1 ultrasound room. And it was driven by the statement that you saw within the reference keys option, which is right up here. Okay, so let's move forward. We can actually jump into talking about the Program for Design and working with the Program for Design tab, where your space is actually living. If I come over here to the Program for Design tab, this is an example of what the Program for Design tab looks like now. I'm going to take you through the hierarchy so you can see that it's generally the same as what you're used to in SEPS 2, but with a little difference in formatting and quite a few feature differences as well. So if I start at the project level, if I go up to Project and show you the Program for Design, this is showing you your PFD for the entire project. Down here at the bottom is your display area, and you can see the total building NSF, the building gross square footage, your departmental gross square footage, and your total room count right here at the bottom. If I click on the department level, the system knows to stay on the Program for Design tab for each level. It assumes that if you're moving from level to level but you've selected Program for Design, it'll stay on the Program for Design. If you're in the contents, it'll stay in the contents. So it's trying to save you some clicking steps. So now we're at the department level, and down here at the bottom you'll notice that the display area has expanded. Granted, we only have one department right now, so you're going to see some of the same numbers, but you've got your total building and departmental NSF, total building and department gross square footage, your sum of departmental gross, and your room counts for both project and department. If I click on the reception areas, Program for Design, now we're looking strictly at the Program for Design for the reception areas. Display area has expanded again, so now we're showing functional area, net square footage, gross square footage, and room counts. And of course, when we get down to the room, we're strictly showing the room general tab. We're talking about one room at a time with the current square footage, and your room counts down here. So I'll return up to the project level. All right, and let's talk about the format of your Program for Design. One feature that might be helpful for you, if you're going to be doing a lot of heavy updating or editing work in both the Program for Design or the Contents tabs, you can click on this little gray block that's in between the two halves of the screen, the tree and the detail side, and it will hide the tree and expand your Program for Design worksheet. The same is true for the contents. And then when you want to return to the tree, just click on that little little gray block in the tree will reappear so that you can choose another level within the tree. As far as functionality goes within the Program for Design tab, you still have the same functionality that you had in SEPS 2 relating to changing quantities and at particular levels, changing room names, changing square footages, your construction and types and phases, and adding comments. When you come into a Program for Design screen for the first time, it will be set to compressed. So you're going to see the roll-up totals of your unique rooms. In this instance, we have 3 OFA03 admin cubicles and 2 cardiology exam rooms. All the rest are individual rooms. You can click on the uncompressed radial button option, and that will break your spaces down individually as well as show you the location within your project. So now you've got your department here in this column, your functional areas, so you've got reception and cardiology patient, and your quantity block to allow you to increase or decrease as needed, your room codes and your room names just as you would expect them to be within the uncompressed mode. So I'm going to go ahead and return to compressed. And we'll talk a little bit about the search block up here. Again, the search block works the same throughout the entire system in the sense that you can put in a partial or a full value to search on, and as soon as you either click on the search button or you press enter on the keyboard, the search filter process will kick in, and the list below, this data list below that has all these pages worth of data will filter based on the value that you've entered in the block. So in this instance, let's say that I want to find out any room in which I have the word administrative included in it. So I'll just type in admin, and the system's actually going to look in both the room code and the room name. So you don't have to choose which one it's going to try and find the information in. Once you key in your value, it's going to provide the listing back of any room that it finds in which the value that you've keyed in matches. So if I had just put in the letter A, it's going to find quite a few more room codes or rooms because the room codes are being looked at as well. So in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and type in admin and press the enter key. And it's going to filter the list down to anything in my entire project. Remember, we're at the project level that has the word admin in either the room code or the room name. And in this instance, we have 3 administrative cubicles. So let's go ahead and make some changes. In this particular case, let's go ahead and change the word cubicle. Let's change it to cube. Make it shorter. And notice as soon as I started typing and making a change, I get the yellow background that says I have outstanding changes on my screen. I can't do anything else over here in the tree until I either save or I cancel my changes. As you have always been able to do, you can actually make room name changes, square footage changes, changes to your phase, construction types, and your comments. But remember, we're at the project level, so at this point we are impacting all 3, here's your quantity of 3, all 3 OFA03 administrative cubicle rooms within the entire project by making this change at the project level. Let's go ahead and change our square footage. We'll increase, go ahead and double the size of the rooms to 120. And notice that it has a red exclamation point next to it, and that is the indicator that you have you have entered a value that is plus or minus 10% of the default value of 60. This is the equivalent to SEPS 2's bolding on the screen of the same thing, the plus or minus 10% of the NSF for that particular room. Again, as in SEPS 2, it's a parameter option within your reporting on the PFD that you can include this indicator as well. So keep that in mind, that approving officials that have SEPS can always see these changes that are considered above or below the criteria standard. Comment. You are probably used to using comments on your changes to room codes. Again, comments will be associated with the project and can be associated with the individual rooms in a Program for Design report. Helps support why you're doing what you're doing. Gives really more information about the rooms themselves as you're making changes. The change notes. Change notes are the audit trail that we talked about at the very beginning. They are why you did what you did, that you want to be able to track that internally. So I think it's going to be sort of a trial and error for you as far as determining when you'll want to use comments and when you'll want to use change notes. Just understand that the comment, you have one comment per space that you can continue to add information to, so it maintains a historical perspective of that particular room that can then be included on your Program for Design report. Change notes are only internal to the audit trail, and they're only for you as the planner to be able to look back and say, oh yeah, I made that change because of whatever particular reason, and you'll be able to tie it back to the value that I was changing originally was this value. I have now changed it to this value, and here's the reason why. So use those as I would suggest using both of these pretty extensively, so that it makes your life easier as you go through the planning process, and you've got a background for why you're doing what you're doing. So I'll go ahead and click on Save Changes. And notice that the display area immediately updated to accommodate the new square footage for your administrative cube.